and the sugar maple. This tree is definitely not native to eastern North America. It has a very interesting botanical story. The common name of this tree is Dawn Redwood, and the scientific name is Metasequoia glyptostroboides. Right? It is related to the coast redwoods in California, which are Sequoia sempervirens, and also to the big trees like in Yosemite Park, which is Sequoia dendron giganteum. Okay, and that's the most Latin names you're going to get the whole day. So all right, but this tree has a really, really interesting botanical story. It is what we call a living fossil, because in terms of Western science, it was known to Western science through its fossils before any Western scientists, European, North American scientists, discovered that it was actually still extant. It was still living. Okay, so it's a living fossil. We have fossil material that looks just like this. And from the fossils, we know that it was once very widespread in distribution in different parts of Asia and even Western North America, where of course now we have the living coast redwoods and big trees. In the late 1930s, some Western botanists became aware of the fact that some Chinese botanists had discovered living Metasequoia trees in China, living Dawn Redwood trees in China. All right, it's 1937. Those Western botanists did not immediately rush off to go study the living Metasequoia trees. Okay, we're at a liberal arts college. Here's a history question. Why didn't the American botanists, for example, run off to China in 1937 to look at Metasequoia, which was a huge new discovery?
War going on.
There's a war going on, yeah. Exactly, right? Japan had invaded China. World War II was going on, exactly. So it wasn't until 1944 that an expedition of American botanists was able to get to China and study the living Metasequoia trees. They brought back a lot of material, including a lot of seeds. And in most cases, a Metasequoia tree that you find on a college campus or an arboretum or a botanical garden in North America is descended from that seed collection. This happens to be the 1957 class tree, and that fits in pretty well with the idea that there wouldn't have been any available till at least 1945 or so, and then several years after that. So there's a number of other interesting things about the Metasequoia tree. You can notice that it has needle-like leaves, all right, and it produces cones. So it's what we call a gymnosperm, or more specifically a conifer, a cone-bearing tree. And when we think about those conifers, we normally think about like the spruce, like the Norway spruce, or a fir tree, or a Douglas fir, or a pine, or something that we call evergreen, because evergreen trees are continually making new needles and continually dropping old ones, and so they always have needles on them and they look evergreen. This conifer, however, is what we call a deciduous conifer. It will drop its leaves this fall, just like all the broadleaves deciduous trees are going to drop their leaves, and it will grow new leaves again in the spring. So that's a very unusual characteristic for conifers. If we were thinking of a native conifer that is deciduous around here, some of you are familiar maybe with the larch tree or the tamarack tree, which is also a deciduous conifer that will drop its leaves. And anybody from the south, like Florida, Louisiana, anywhere around in there, some of you might anyway be familiar with the bald cypress tree, which is in the same plant family as this. It's also a deciduous tree. And I'll just tell a little joke on myself. The bald cypress really pulled a fast one on me one time when our children were younger. We took them to Disney World around holiday time in the winter. We got there and I'm looking around, what are all these dead trees? And I realized after a while that they were just bald cypress trees that didn't have their leaves on, right? Yeah. Okay.
This tree illustrates the class tree tradition a little bit. What we have been told by some of the groundskeepers, although this isn't a perfect illustration, is that usually the class marker faces Maine. This isn't perfect that way. And then the odd years have an owl on the marker, and the even years have an acorn.
Torch.
A torch, not an acorn, a torch. And then I always laugh. The class of '72, we were just under their tree. They have ivy on their tree, on their marker, and so it's whatever that class wanted ivy, they got ivy. So Vassar makes exceptions to everything. And we have no idea why the owl and the torch are the two symbols, and they still alternate, but we don't. We've been trying to research what the origin of that is, and we haven't found it documented anywhere. So, yeah, and they get covered with mulch, and then before reunion, the ground